Many are the guileless victims of the Joker's cruel, cunning humor. But few are those who have paid the conniving comedian back in his own crafty coin. But when someone dares to make the bandit buffoon himself the butt of painful jests, when someone dares to ridicule the clowning rogue, to mock the menacing master of mockery, then that dynamic duo, Batman and Robin, know they are in for thrills and chills aplenty as they pursue the malevolent mime in their attempt to put an end to the case of the Practical Joker. In prison, the Joker finds himself victim to a number of practical jokes. He inadvertently sits on a bed of nails. Somebody manages to slip vinegar in his coffee, and a bucket of water even fell on the villain's head. Though the other prisoners find this endlessly amusing, the guards become suspicious when they notice the Joker deliberately walked under the water bucket. Suddenly, during outside time, tear gas filled the prison yard. The Joker used this as an opportunity to flee, as the water bucket actually contained a chemical that neutralized the tear gas. This was all a plan to orchestrate the mad villain's escape. As he flees, one of the guards is revealed to be Batman in disguise, who begins to pursue the Joker. However, with his backup, the Joker is able to overpower Batman and escape. Robin tries to help, but is quickly captured in a net, while during a struggle between Batman and the Joker, the world's greatest detective is accidentally hit by some gunfire from the guards once the tear gas clears. The Joker and his goons are able to escape, but several days later the dynamic duo quickly gets a clue to the villain's whereabouts when he outright announces where he's going to be next in the local paper. As promised, the Joker shows up, pulling pranks on the police before breaking into a building in order to steal a model of Gotham City, made with precious stones and unmatched craftsmanship. It's worth a small fortune, so Joker and his men quickly move to steal a model. The dynamic duo arrive on the scene and quickly enter into battle with the Joker and his gang. But after a lengthy chase, the Joker is once again able to escape. A few days later, the Joker sends a letter to Commissioner Gordon, promising that he will be playing a series of practical jokes on himself in Gotham Square that night. He promises not to be playing any jokes on the police this time, and counts on them being there. Gordon is furious, saying that the Joker's gone too far this time, and regardless of what he says, the moment he sets foot in Gotham Square, they will be there to arrest him. That night, the Joker does indeed appear, but only as an image projected on the side of a building. As promised, a movie begins playing of the Joker being subjected to a series of pranks. Batman and Robin, however, realize this is all just some elaborate distraction, and they're able to find the Joker breaking into the Gotham Music Company, which has a collection of rare musical instruments, including a Stradivarius worth $50,000. Batman knew the Joker would be here thanks to an offhanded comment the villain made about him being Nero fiddling while Rome burned. It revealed what was on the villain's mind. Though Batman and the Joker get in a quick skirmish, the Joker is able to escape once more, fleeing in a nearby van. However, the Dark Knight suddenly calms down. The Joker didn't escape at all. For once, the Clown Prince of Crime was really tricked, and the villain found himself in a van full of police. A furious Joker is once again taken to prison, noting that if it weren't for Batman, he'd still be free. But he'll get the best of the dynamic duo one day. They can't keep him in here forever. How long before the jeering jester will once again perform his evil pranks before an unsuspecting, helpless audience? Yes, how long? Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and this is my recap and review of Detective Comics 91. So this year we're going to do something a little different based on just an idea I had that I thought would be fun. I put on the Patreon poll a list of 3 different long-running series in the world of comics: Detective Comics, Avengers, and Wolverine. And out of the 3, this is what won. And what we're going to do with that is do 12 random reviews of this long-running series. I literally just plugged into random.org a list of all the issues that Detective Comics has had in its long run and had it spit out 12 different issues, and we're going to review them in the publication order that they happened in. That's going to include 11 of the main issues and 1 of the annuals. And first up is Detective Comics number 91, the earliest of all the Detective Comics issues pulled out of the random list that I generated. Which is pretty remarkable when we think about it, that the earliest one is number 91, but that goes into how long Detective Comics has been running. And indeed, we're going to be taking a trip through time with this 12 days of Detective Comics that I'm planning on doing. Because we start out with a comic published in what I believe is September 1944, right smack dab in the middle of America's involvement in World War II. It is interesting reading this, to say the least. This comic reads more like a historical document than it does some sort of entertaining piece of fiction. In fact, right from the get-go, the first thing that we see is DC's editorial board is dominated by the likes of pediatric doctors and people from the Boy Scouts. This is a piece of entertainment designed almost exclusively through children. The way the story's told, the focus and ideas behind the narrative, there really isn't much more thought beyond it just being mostly for kids. And I don't say that dismissively. We all know that's what superhero comics originally were. These are just basically elaborate ways of selling bubblegum ads to children. And yet, I did enjoy this comic. It's fun and it's super interesting seeing this comic being made clearly during wartime, which does affect the quality of the comic in terms of the artwork and the general thought behind the writing, even relative to other comics published during this era, both before and after the war. We aren't quite under the effect of the Comics Code Authority yet either. This is basically a pre-Golden Age comic. A very early take on Batman, yet a classic one that anyone who's seen the Adam West series will recognize quite quickly, because that's the lines on which we're drawing from here. It's less self-aware than the Adam West series, that's to be certain, but it is in that tone and spirit. Batman and a very young Dick Grayson are going around stopping the Joker from his crazy schemes, which are particularly violent, but the Joker very openly threatens to kill people in this comic, which I find amusing. Because, like I said, we aren't under the strict guidelines of the Comics Code Authority yet, though it would flirt with stuff like death and that sort of thing. Little things in Detective Comics number 91 don't feel like the full measure of the Comics Code Authority quite yet. Yes, this is a comic designed for children, yet the people behind it are finding their own measure of what is and isn't appropriate for children, and that's perfectly fine. Already you can see the effect superheroes are having on DC Comics as a publication company. We're already 91 issues into Detective Comics and even farther in Action Comics at this point in time. And you can see it in even their logo, which very clearly advertises this is the company of Superman. Batman, meanwhile, while not the full focus of this comic, there's plenty of other little side stories because this is still Detective Comics, is already clearly dominating the focus and attention of this series, as he would eventually come to do entirely within this series, and in general in terms of how Batman is treated in his publications and that sort of thing. Which is all good. It's interesting, and it's very cool to think about what people were doing and what life was like for the publication company at this time in this world that we're looking back on. 1944 is a world away now, and it's a very different world. What's cool is that, unlike some other comics I've read from this time period, it holds up surprisingly well. There isn't a lot of stuff that's clearly a byproduct of this era and that sort of thing. I've read plenty of an old Action Comics with out-and-out racism in it and that sort of thing, which isn't really here, and that's nice. At least not the overt kind that I've seen in other issues from this time period. Meanwhile, it's otherwise a pretty classic Joker story. He cracks puns, he tries to break out and has weird plans, and the only reason that Batman was able to solve it is because the Joker basically gave him the answer of sorts earlier on in this story. Kind of. How Batman was able to make the conclusion of Joker making that Nero remark, connecting to him stealing this very valuable violin, is unclear. But that's how it goes. And we just have to sort of take that leap of logic with these early Batman-type comics. This isn't the smartest thing in the world because it's not intended to be the smartest thing in the world. It's intended to sell bubblegum to children, like I originally said. But if you can't tell, I clearly see a lot of value in this comic because it's no longer just a comic. It's history. It's a part of us and what our stuff is like. This isn't a wartime comic in the sense that it doesn't have anything to do with World War II, unlike, some other superhero issues at the time. This isn't Captain America fighting on the front lines, or even Superman helping out with the Allies overseas. This is Batman being Batman and fighting crime. It's an escape from all of that stuff, as far as I can tell. But nevertheless, you can also tell that this comic feels rushed. I say all of that because next time in this little series we're doing, we're going to be looking at a comic published only 2 years later. But that's a critical 2 years, where America proved victorious in World War II, and that was published in a very different world. As you might imagine, that has a big effect on the quality of this comic, which is going to be interesting to talk about next time. So stay tuned for that. If you like Comic Island, be sure to check out our Patreon page. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.